Welcome to this lecture where I'll show you one of the easiest ways to get rid of skin issues. The upcoming techniques rely on the spot healing brush and the healing brush tools. These are very easy to use and they work non-destructively. This activity will take us 5 to 7 minutes to complete, and this is going to be our end result. Let's get started. The spot healing brush is probably one of the most useful tools for beginners. That's because it gives fast results, but it doesn't require any knowledge whatsoever. Its hotkey is J, but you're better off long clicking and selecting it from the left panel. With it active, I'm going to create a new empty layer. You could potentially use it directly on your image or on a duplicate, but I'd much rather use this tool non-destructively, and that's because it has a particular setting that allows me to do that. From the options bar, choose Sample All Layers. This will now look for all the pixel information that's available on my canvas, no matter if it's above or underneath this layer. That works to our advantage because we can have all our edits on a completely separate layer. That's a great way to showcase the before and after shot, but even more importantly, you can always tone down the opacity or further adjust those corrections with maximum flexibility because they're separated from our image. Now we can click and, like magic, the imperfection goes away. From the options bar, make sure you're set to Content Aware. That will produce the best results. This works wonders on blemishes, pimples, any problems of the skin that are obvious when zooming in to such a high degree. So this can give you a lovely portrait shot without too much fuss. As you can see, I'm constantly clicking and all those spots go away. Because this tool relies on a brush, this means I can quickly adjust my size and my hardness. For the latter option, I suggest you stick to a hard brush because that will give you better results. But overall, this is useful when you're dealing with a particularly tricky area because you can use the square bracket keys to change the size on the fly. My advice is you work on small regions and you have your brush slightly larger than the spot you're trying to fix. You could potentially click and drag, but I find that method less reliable. The spot healing brush isn't infallible, so use Ctrl-Z whenever you see it doesn't do a great job, and that may happen from time to time because you have no additional control over it. In general, it'll do a decent job, especially if your image size is generous. The more pixels, the better. This tool tries to maintain all of your image's details. Sometimes it won't be able to save all these small pores, but in general, it tries to blend those new spots into the surrounding area. When you're happy, toggle this layer's visibility and see your edits. In case you went too far, the great thing is you can switch to the eraser tool. For example, we can get back some of these freckles. These might be considered a flaw or a special trait, but beauty is in the eye of the beholder. Back to our task, this is why it pays to work on a separate layer. I can constantly go back and forth between removing spots and adding them back in. That's the spot healing brush, a great way to fix some problematic areas with ease. Next, we have the healing brush tool. Don't confuse the two, they work in different ways. I'll hide this previous layer so we can start from scratch. This tool allows us to work on a separate layer as well, so let me create a new one. Right, now from the options bar we want to sample from all layers. In this case, my project is empty, so I don't have to worry about picking up any unwanted pixels. In general, I'd advise you set it at Current and Below. That means you can have all sorts of layers above it, but the healing brush tool won't pick up that information. That's the first thing about it. Secondly, this needs a reference point. So while the first tool made use of Photoshop's magic-like engine, this requires you to set up a point where Photoshop can sample some pixels. I want to work on the nose and I'll use the clear part of the cheek as my reference point. To set it up, I need to hold down Alt and click. Notice my cursor has changed. Now, when I let go and move over to the nose, you'll see it's like I'm about to paint over it with that cheek area. Don't worry, the end result isn't going to look like that. So now I'm painting over it. You might not realize the difference it makes, so let me go back to the original state. As you can see, it does a nice job. But why do you have to specify an initial area? Well, this makes the end result much more natural. The spot healing brush tool can sometimes render results that are clearly fake, either fuzzy, blurry, or just out of place. This tool allows for more control because you can tell Photoshop, hey, use these specific pixels. So it's a toss-up between the two. Sometimes you might want to rely on Photoshop's content-aware technology that was created either by wizards or ancient aliens. Other times you might want to get more control over your results and switch to the regular healing brush tool. In my experience, I always go back and forth between them. When one fails, I always try the other one. Remember to always resample and pay attention to how much you drag. Let me illustrate the issue. Say I want to fix the chin region based on the cheek area. Simple enough, I'll sample to the right of the mouth because that's the best looking skin out of the image. Now I'm going over her chin, but look what happens. As I click and hold, I have two cursors on the screen, the one that I'm painting with and the other one that shows me where I'm sampling from. This completely changes the outcome in a negative way. This is why you should work in small increments on small areas. The best work is subtle and natural looking, so keep that in mind. I find I need to constantly resample as I progress with my retouching. If you don't remember to do that, Photoshop will give you a rude awakening. One particularly interesting feature is this aligned feature from the options bar. Currently it's unchecked. Let me show you how this works. I'll increase my brush size dramatically with my square bracket key. Now I'll hold Alt and I'll sample over her eye. Next, I'll paint over her cheek, which is going to create a very weird effect, but it will show you how this works. Okay, we have an extra eye. Now I'll move down and I'll paint again. As you can see, I'm getting yet another eye. That's how this healing brush tool works if you don't have aligned checked. You sample your source point and Photoshop remembers it no matter where you move your mouse cursor. Let me undo these steps and now I'll enable it. I'll set my source point here yet again and I'll paint over her cheek. Same result, but here's the difference. I'll move towards her chin area, and once I start painting, notice where my second mouse cursor is positioned. Right now, it's over her nose. So instead of painting in another eye, my source point has moved with my cursor, and thus I'm creating a nose in this area. That's the difference between having this feature enabled or turned off. I can't say I recommend either one of them because I use them both. It varies case by case, image by image, spot by spot, and these are the healing brush tools. Please download the image and have a go at it yourself and see how you do. Have fun.